Welcome back, friends, to the Hobby Barn Basement for part 3 of the Hangar 9 OV-10 Bronco build. I wanted to do a wiring and electronics update since it's been a little while. I'd like to start out with plan ahead when you do your wiring. Long term, over the winter, I'm going to end up revisiting this project and creating an entire wiring harness for it. What I have will work and it will be fine, but it would be much more functional with a regular wire harness, clips, etc. The directions call for harnesses or for extensions and so forth, which will work, but they don't lend themselves well to taking the model apart and putting it together. In some instances, it would be almost impossible. The second thing, and I want to point this out, the landing gear have a specific connector that comes with it, and I'm going to point that out. And as long as the landing gear connection is, it is not long enough to get through your wings. And even if it were, you would still have no functional way to use it without putting either an extension on it or creating a clip harness. And lastly, when wiring your motors according to the directions, the ESCs are supposed to go in the main fuselage, which, if you watch the videos, and I'm sure you have, they are mounted up front, which means you've got 3 feet of electrical wire that you've got to run from that main fuselage through the wings into your booms. Now, that's fine until you get them there. And the 3 feet's more than enough to reach down here to the motor. Problem is, how do you unhook it? Because what'll happen is your cowl is going to be over top. So every time you want to unhook your wing, you'd have to pull your prop, you'd have to pull your cowl, you'd have to unhook it from your motor, etc. What I did was I created an extension line from here, put a bulkhead in, and then made them removable, so that all I have to do when I hook the wing up is plug them in. And the same goes for the servos. This is the landing gear. What I ended up doing was I took a 36-inch extension and I cut the male end and I put it on the landing gear lead. I soldered it. Of course, then this is the lead for the rudder. And then your wiring for those, which no, I've not run, is just a simple, this is the rest of that extension. And at the other end of that, I've already shown you, was the plug, which is specific to the landing gear box, and soldered it. So I created my own extension for it. And then the other one is just a standard 36-inch extension. Now I'm going to lead that into, they're supposed to go through this hole. All your wires, these extensions, then you route them through here and then out this hole into the main fuselage body. The problem with that is, unlike your wings, which have a tube to run through, which is right there, these are your leads for your outer wings, there's no tube. It's a straight shot, as you can see. So what'll happen is you're going to have to use some type of wire wrap or snake skin, which I would recommend, which is just another reason to create a harness. And then either create a secondary hole, one for your servo extensions, and then put one either here, or if you can, if you put your finger in through there, you can actually feel there's space. You could put another hole in here and then run your electrical wires for your motors, and then again put a secondary hole here, because the servo leads and the landing gear leads will actually, there's a tube where the other outer wing leads will go, but these will feed into and then subsequently out here and could be bundled with your first set of wires. However, doing that with your motor leads, I wouldn't recommend that. I would create a secondary hole, run those separately, because those will have to run through here. so far, I'm not going to call this plane a wiring nightmare, but it does require some thought. Once all of this gets into your main compartment, which is just about where I am, because I've still got to, I have to wrap all this wiring before I run it. The last part will be, and I apologize for location, for these things, you'll have to, again, create an extension for your nose gear, as that is not long enough. So what will happen is the ESCs are going to get mounted on each side of this firewall, and then your leads for those motors will reach down through here. I've measured these. The landing gear box will have to go here, and then the receiver slash power box will have to go here, whatever you're going to use, or if you're using the Spectrum 20 channel receiver. So everything comes, that hole on your main wing set is approximately 7 inches back, which comes in right here. Those leads are about 8 inches long when they stick out of the wing, which is more than enough to reach whatever you need here. Your motor leads are more than enough to reach down to where your ESC is. There's lots of room in here. It's like a bathtub. You can almost put yourself in this thing. It's so big. So working room is not going to be an issue. Lastly, before I wrap this video up, because I want to keep it relatively short, here's a little preview of the cowl and the motor with the prop attached. It's going to require just a little bit of shaving on the spinner or on the nose cone to fit properly, but it looks fantastic. It's an easy fit, and that's I'm getting excited, folks, because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. And on a final note, in order to get all of your functional channels, you're really going to want a 20 channel radio and receiver, or something that you can program channels to. The IX12 should work, and depending on the receiver box that you use, as long as you can program multiple channels, you should be fine. Otherwise, you're stuck using Y harnesses, which, yes, you could, but then you lose the individual programmability. And when you have 4 flaps, none of them are the same. They were all similar, but not one of these flaps, when I programmed the distances, was the same, and they all required tweaking. And to do that, you need individual channels. So obviously, more individual channels eat up more spaces on your receiver, subsequently require more radio. So long term, just a few things for my builders out there. You know, if you've gotten this far in, I'm sure that you're painfully aware of the same things that I am. I just wanted to give a few notes. And lastly, and I'll wrap this up, your screw holes, which is where your main wing is going to seat. These were a little fussy when I seated these. When they're out, those screws fit right in. It's no problem. But as soon as you put your wing on there, be very careful not to cross thread this. The instructions called for putting some Loctite on when you put that wing on. I actually ended up having to use a little bit of oil to loosen these threads up first. Perhaps a little thread locker after the fact would be fine. But for flights, as long as you're tightening down beforehand, I think you'll be fine. I'm welcome to comments on that. Anyway, I appreciate all the watch. Subscribe, which I never ask. And any comments, please leave them below, and I appreciate the feedback. Thanks again, folks.